And yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, you see me beaming with a smile. It is because just a few days ago, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni was rejected. Absolutely. You heard me right. Yoweri Kaguta Museveni was rejected by the Uganda Law Society. He was planning on giving them money, 5 billion shillings, a whopping 5 billion shillings, only for the Uganda Law Society under the stewardship of none other than the distinguishable Isaac Ssemakadde to say, we don't want your money. Read there with me, ladies and gentlemen, why lawyers rejected Museveni's 5 billion shillings pledge. Ladies and gentlemen, absolutely, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni was rejected. Oh yes. This is the situation or the moment I say, inject this in my veins. Please do. Inject this in my veins. Woo! They rejected Museveni's money. Now, why am I smiling? I mean, you all know, ladies and gentlemen, in a political environment long defined by patronage, coercion, and Museveni's calculated generosity, the Uganda Law Society delivered what you could describe as a dramatic and unexpected rebuke to Museveni himself. Remember, he refers to himself as a modern-day king. He thinks that he's the only one that should be referred to as president. Now, he was rejected by another president, Isaac Ssemakadde. That's what we're looking at tonight. Welcome to Mordecai Morisa Live. Let's do this, shall we? Now, ladies and gentlemen, I think I should say, if you're watching this and if you're just finding out about this, there are folks I saw who only watch this channel as their source of news, political news and political commentary. So I should say breaking news. Allow me say breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Museveni was rejected and I love it. Okay, let's go on and see what they did here. They had an event, the Radical Nuba recently had an event, as you can see, just 4 days ago. And through that event, they really spoke to Museveni confidently, unequivocal, and said, we don't want your money. And why? Because we know what you want to use this money for, especially with you giving us this money. I'll give you the document. They released this one. They call it the termination of begging relations with the President of the Republic of Uganda and chairperson of the National Resistance Movement. Now, this was the event when the treasurer of the Uganda Law Society was giving this statement, announcing how they're saying no to Museveni's money. Listen here, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. President, good afternoon, everyone.
By Mr. President, he was referring to the president of the Uganda Law Society, Isaac Ssemakadde.
My name is Isiko Arthur, the treasurer of Uganda Law Society. Today I come with a special announcement. We call it the Executive Order number 8 of 2026. And it goes as follows. It's titled Termination of Begging Relations with the President of the Republic of Uganda and chairperson of the National Resistance Movement. Let me repeat it for clarity.
Say it one more time.
Termination of begging relations with the President of the Republic of Uganda and the chairperson of the National Resistance Movement.
Now, let's jump right here, fast forward here, where they mention where they're speaking directly to Museveni. Listen here, ladies and gentlemen.
Autonomy and genuine professional empowerment. Number one, we hereby terminate the begging relations. All forms of solicitation, dependency, financial pledges, or donations from the President of the Republic of Uganda in his capacity as head of state or chairperson of the National Resistance Movement are hereby terminated forthwith. The ULS shall no longer pursue acknowledge or rely on the unfulfilled pledge of 2018 or any similar inducements that could imperil the bar's independence. Furthermore, the aforementioned shillings 5 billion pledge is hereby denounced as a hollow gesture, emblematic of a broader pattern of governmental unaccountability. This denunciation serves to reaffirm ULS's commitment to a fiscal highlight of the disparity between unkept promises to civil institutions and the unchecked expansion of State House expenditures on donations and classified items. The ULS restates the imperative to safeguard the independence of the bar.
Ladies and gentlemen, the promise was made in 2018. I think this has been a long time coming. I think they had to reject this money right away. But hey, better late than never. I'm so glad that they do. You know, Museveni has built this facade of a persona who is so rich, wealthy, that he wants you to perceive him as the only way for your survival. That without him, that you cannot survive. And the delay in giving these folks the 5 billion shillings was calculated. This was strategic. It's not that they didn't have this money. I mean, you have seen folks, musicians and entertainment folks who travel to Guru to meet Keleba Kandwanao, famously known as Salim Saleh. They usually get cash, COD, cash on delivery. The moment they get there, you know, you see them taking pictures and, you know, saying we've been given this much money, or music promoters and stuff like that, events organizers. So they had the 5 billion shillings. But Museveni deliberately didn't want to release this money. He wanted to bring them to a point of pleading. He wanted them to really get on their knees. This is one way of him trying to gain a footing in the Uganda Law Society, and by gaining a footing, you give him an inch, he takes the entire thing. Because his strategy is always one: utter manipulation, coercion, and complete domination. So he wanted these folks to really plead. So he kept on holding on to this money, trying to read who is willing to bow before me for this money. And I'm so glad that despite of all these years, they have finally said, we don't want your money. Because just like they state here in the document, I'll read you here just a few lines. Read here in this document: the termination of begging relations with the president, okay, for the respect of the office, not the man, I'll say President of the Republic of Uganda and chairperson of the National Resistance Movement. I'll read you here what they say. Read here. All forms of supplication, solicitation, or dependence on the financial pledges or donations from Museveni in his capacity as head of state and chairperson of the NRM are hereby terminated. They're talking about here the denunciation of the pledge. Read here the denunciation of the pledge. They say the aforementioned shillings, 5 billion shillings pledge is hereby denounced as a hollow gesture, emblematic of a broader pattern of governmental profligacy. I mean, you guys, we know you're lawyers, but why don't you say excessive or wasteful profligacy? Oh my God. And unaccountability. They know this for what it is. Museveni is not trying to help them, so that they could complete the headquarters for their offices. Absolutely not. He knows, but by giving these crumbs off his table, he can control them. And I'm so glad they're saying, nope, we're not taking this money. This is a thing to praise. Like I said, in an environment where this has sort of been normalized as a culture. When you have folks like Isaac Ssemakadde saying, no, you have to take a bow and say, thank you for what you're doing. And then there was a question about how are they going to be able to fund their activities. I think it was another guy in the Uganda Law Society that answered that question. Listen here.
In light of Executive Order number 8 of 2026, what alternatives are available to grow the income base of the society?
Yeah.
First and foremost, we want to set the record clear that Uganda Law Society is a body established by law. We are a non-profit-making entity.
Exactly.
And a self-sustainable body. We have ended begging relationships with the President of Uganda. The President of Uganda, to be clear, has not been an income base of the society. The 5 billion that was promised was never fulfilled. And we are saying the purpose at that time has been overtaken by events. The order clearly indicates that the ULS house is nearing completion, built on the hard work and backbone of the members. It is up to us now to continue being united as the membership. It is up to us now to continue promoting self-sustainability. We are
as it should. As it should. And this message should go to almost everyone in Uganda. Relying on Museveni has never wanted to help people out of goodwill. He's a user. He believes in a quid pro quo. I give you this, you give me this. And all he wants is ultimate and utter loyalty. Bowing to him and looking at him as the only solution for Uganda. So, the Uganda Law Society's decision to reject this money should be appreciated, should be spread all over the country so that people can know that you can actually resist this money. Because for decades, Museveni has refined a strategy of consolidating power through these financial inducements. That's why I've had people say, when you go to Museveni, they ask you, what do you want? He asks you, what do you want? And by offering these handouts, he's able to neutralize dissent and cultivate unquestionable loyalty. That's why you end up with the likes of Anita Among and Nabanja, who call him Deputy God, and after God, you're the second one. You can take, for example, the recent pledge to the social media content creators. That is only the latest example of this pattern that will continue to grow until he's kicked out of power. So in such context, to offer the Uganda Law Society this money was widely seen not as just mere support, but a calculated attempt to draw yet another independent institution into his orbit of state patronage. Because once you get this money, then folks start fighting. You know what money does to people. You start fighting for 5 billion shillings. Wait for those folks, the social media content creators, they're going to be fighting. So we were all stand for all the right reasons. These folks deserve a round of applauses everywhere they go. Council Isaac Ssemakadde. This is distinguishable leadership. Despite of the hardships you find yourself in at this particular moment, to the point of opening trumped charges against you, yet in exile, you refuse to yield, dismissing this pledge as a hollow gesture, and indeed it is. Now this continues to reaffirm the society's commitment to self-reliance that emphasizes that you are actually lawyers, that you don't have to bend to Museveni to survive. This is no ordinary decision, especially in a country that is grappling with economic hardships. Turning down these billions of shillings is an act that borders to unfathomable. Nobody, I can guarantee you, there are not as many people in Uganda who would say no to Museveni's money. It is precisely an action that elevates the society's stance from a mere administrative, body that has made a decisive decision, but a bold declaration of independence. These are situations, are moments that folks who will be members of the Uganda society will look back and be like, hey, for the foundation that was laid by Isaac Ssemakadde, by Isiko and the rest of other folks in Uganda Law Society, we stand and we say no to whoever will be president or king or whatever 500 years from now. If we still have Uganda, if the Ugandan people can keep the nation. Especially at a time when institutions have been forcefully weakened and others willingly co-opted. They want to be to enjoy money in Museveni's simping circles. You have decided to draw a clear line. Integrity is not for sale. That's what you have done. You have exposed the limits of a political strategy that relies on financial leverage to secure compliancy. That's what you are, Uganda Law Society. But more importantly, this reignites a sense of possibility that resistance, even in its most principled and disciplined form, remains achievable. Your president is in exile. I'm quite certain you need this money. You want this money. You would appreciate if this money came. But this action that you have taken is going to reverberate around the country. The unwavering stance of Semakadde, like I said, despite of his personal risks and consequences, transform this moment into something larger than an institutional policy. It becomes a powerful symbol of defiance, a direct challenge to a system that has long thrived on compromise. So compromise isn't winning. Now, this is the true definition of the radical Nuba. It is the true definition of radicalism. Rejecting Museveni's billions. It is not just a financial decision. It is a political statement of the highest order. We don't have these kind of decisions in Uganda. You would struggle to find this kind of decision. Somebody who says, oh, I don't want money. So that's why it sends a clear and resonant message to the Ugandan people across our country that even in the shadow of entrenched power, there are still those waiting to stand firm, unbowed and unbowed. That's what you are. Thank you so much, the Uganda Law Society, for rejecting Museveni's money. Forward, onward, together. Museveni's regime will come to an end, will come crumbling down through these kind of actions, as small as it might look. But it is. You don't know what you have done to me and to so many other people out there. Thank you. So hey, all hope is not lost, especially from a guy who wrote a book, The Orders of the Optimist. So now my optimism has been renewed. Optimism in saving our country has been renewed by the actions made by Isaac Ssemakadde and his colleagues. Thank you, guys. You are indeed the Uganda Law Society.
Did you enjoy what you just watched?
I'm sure they did.
I'm going to guess that you did. How about you consider subscribing to Mordecai Marissa Live YouTube channel? Thank you.